welcome to the Earth Feels podcast.
I'm Rose.
And I'm Christine.
Welcome to Earth Feels, the podcast for people feeling overwhelmed by the endlessly gloomy climate news.
Where every week we have soul-based conversations about climate change and explore the idea that climate change may be happening for us as much as it is happening to us.
If you are ready to shift your focus and secure the future for our kids and our grandkids, then this is the podcast for you.
And yes, we do know how to spell. Hi, Rose.
Hey, Christine. Wow, we're in some incredible space right now.
Yeah, absolutely. So let's just jump right in. What did you post on Facebook yesterday? Is that our question?
No, I think our question is, what's the new normal? Have we arrived at a new normal? Because it feels like
we haven't arrived anywhere yet, I would say.
We haven't arrived anywhere yet. So I have this group of women that I meet with virtually, that I have been privileged to meet with them for a number of years in person. We used to have this kind of spiritual group. We call ourselves the Women. There's just 4 of us, and we were all kind of individually, simultaneously going through our dark night of the soul. And so we had this meeting on Tuesday mornings that I have to say for years really just, it helped me keep my head above water, because I was in a place where I really thought I was going crazy. And, I'd been knocked to my knees. And so anyway, this past week, we actually had a conversation on Google Duo. Who even knew that was a thing? And a bunch of 4 old bags trying to figure it out technologically, which had all these glitches and stuff. But we finally got it together, and we really sat for like an hour and a half and just talked about what we're feeling and what's going on, and how the shift of the paradigm, and what's really happening underneath. We're seeing all this surface stuff, with the pandemic, what it's causing, but what's the bigger message? Can we listen deeper? So anyway, last night I had this message that I was texting them. And
when you say a message, it was, your
it was like
download.
Well, I felt the need to contact them because I was feeling this relief. And my saying with them was, who talks like this? And they would laugh and they say, we do. Because it's just bizarre stuff that would come in from spirit, and you'd be like, and you put it out there and you'd be like, this is not the normal paradigm kind of stuff to talk about. Anyway, this is all background. So I started writing this message to them. And as I was writing the message to them, I was sending it to them in a text. And it was like at 1:00 in the morning, San Diego time, which is 4 a.m. East Coast time, and they're all on the East Coast. And I just had this knowing that this message was meant to go out a little bit wider. And so I shared it on my social media. And Facebook is really essentially the only social media that I'm on. And then I went to sleep.
Mm-hmm.
And I woke up this morning and I was like, uh-oh. So I just want to share it because I was talking to my partner this morning and I was like, I shared this really controversial thing. And he's like, actually, no, you've actually had some pretty good feedback. I was just expecting people to really push back against it. But anyway, it's real quick. So here's what I wrote. I'm going to say something odd. Surprise, surprise. I actually feel a perverse sense of relief at where we are now. As an empath for so long, I have felt humanity hurtling toward the cliff, a runaway freight train. And there's no trestle tracks ahead. It's just chasm. The angst and terror of the collective intensified as more and more of us realized it and stood helplessly by while our leaders mentally masturbate, rape, and pillage in the name of profit. This virus may be our one shot at reset. If, big if, we can figure out what is important collectively, we may just have the opportunity for humanity as we know it to survive. Not the dysfunctional paradigm we've been living in, but humanity and the sentient beings we have been blessed with on this planet. The universe so wants us to survive. Mother has been shouting for decades, warning us, crying out And we have ignored her and continued to practice dominion over her, over all her incredible creatures, and over each other. Think about that. Dominion over each other. Well, now it's game on. We either get it together and save ourselves, or we go down. And I do so hate the space in between stories, so I guess that's where my relief comes in. We will now find out fairly quickly how it's going to end. The only question is, will enough people awaken in time? Each of us must do our part to stop shaming and blaming and to leave our waiting to be saved victim behind. We must each bring our courage and compassion A game to the table. Or not.
That was beautiful. That's what people need to hear. I mean, for me right now, I'm stressed because my daughter's on the front lines.
Now, what does she do?
So she's a medical resident.
Okay.
And her partner is an anesthesia resident. And so he is definitely on the front lines. So they'll be fine. They're both young, but and of course my husband's a physician, and we just happened to, so I think we should bring our listeners a little bit up to date, because in our last podcast, you were talking about going to Seattle. Of course, that didn't happen.
No, they closed down they closed down the program that I was going to for the weekend. So yeah, and it's so life has changed. So I stayed in San Diego, and beyond that, things have changed so much. I was planning on leaving San Diego on April 7th and going to our property in Kauai for a few weeks. And I had some friends that were coming to meet me, and just and the beach is my happy place. And, we've owned that property for many, many years, for over a couple of decades. And so I was planning in Kauai. And so I was planning on doing that. Well, the mayor of Kauai said, Kauai's on vacation, folks. Don't come out here, So I canceled my flight, and I was like, so now what do I do? Do I stay in San Diego, or do I go back to New England where my partner is, But here's the thing. I'm going to get really emotional saying this. I so trust what my body tells me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something I've really worked hard to accept. I mean, who listens to what their body tells them? But inside your body is this deep knowing. And once you pay attention to it, it never lies to you, in my humble experience. So I had this deep knowing in my body that I need to be within driving distance of my sons.
Mm-hmm.
Now, is that fear speaking, or is that, and that translates into, we don't know what's happening right now. We don't know who among us is affected. We don't know who among us is going to get sick. I mean, in the beginning, they were saying, oh, it's only elderly and those with compromised immune systems. And
I don't know if that's totally true, but that is what they're saying. But younger people are dying.
Right. So so they were originally saying that it was just elderly and those with compromised immune systems. And so I was like, yeah, but my body is saying, don't leave California.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, so, and when I listen deeper, it's like, you need to be within driving distance because, and here's the part that's really emotional, because if you have if you are presented with an opportunity where you need to say goodbye, you need to be within driving distance, because we may not be flying.
Mm-hmm.
And for me to be on the East Coast, I may not be able to get out here, or my kids may not be able to get to me.
Mm-hmm.
And that's my priority. I mean, how does that become my priority? That I'm close enough that if one of us is dying, we could say goodbye to each other. That's my priority right now.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm here, and I've pushed my flight out till the beginning of May, which who knows if we'll even be flying by then.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe I'm here. I don't know. Maybe I'm here indefinitely. I don't know what even that even looks like. And yet, with all of this craziness going on, I still feel this sense of, okay, we're finally here. There's no waiting for the shoe to drop. The shoe is dropped. Now we're in it. Now we're in it.
Yeah, which the expectation has been on our part when we've been looking at the disaster, which is climate change and ecosystem overreach. We've thought it would happen, not the coronavirus, but the system would fail in some way long before this, because
Mhm.
we've been living on borrowed time for a long time, years. And here it is. I really appreciate what you wrote on Facebook, because I think that is the perspective that reframes this. And personally, we don't know the toll that this virus is going to take on us. Obviously, nobody does. But even with that, if we can, with that uncertainty, that we can say, yeah, we need this, and we don't. And I don't think you mean it, nor do I, in the sense that, yes, our population needs to be lowered, the human population. That's not what we're saying. Some people are saying, well, it's about time humans are a scourge on the planet. That's not what we're saying. We're saying this is our opportunity to live differently on the planet as humans.
Yeah. So my partner and I have been having these discussions that, okay, so finally, Massachusetts today, thank you, Governor Charlie Baker, has said non-essential businesses shut down. Now, my partner works he's a machinist, so he's a skilled laborer, but he's an hourly worker. And his company, much to my chagrin, much to my fury, what's the word? I've been furious about it. They've just been, until the governor shuts us down, we're business as usual. So finally they have today. So now we're in the next phase forward. And it's like, so I've been saying to James, so can you sit really quietly and listen to what you want your life to look like next? Because maybe they'll pay you, maybe they won't. Maybe you'll collect unemployment. Maybe that will run out after a while. Maybe you'll retire early. He's only 62. Maybe you'll collect Social Security, whatever. But we need to think about what we want to create going forward, because
Like on a personal level.
Because on a personal level, that becomes the collective, right? I don't think there's any going back to business as usual. I just don't.
Well, we hope not.
I don't. Well, the planet can't sustain it, and we've known that for a long time. But I think there are some that are still thinking, oh, we'll shut it down for 2 or 3 weeks and then we just go back. I don't really see that. I see that people are going to start working from home. After you've worked from home for 2 or 3 months, and you have the ability to be with your family, and are you going to want to make that hour and a half commute every day that you've been making, that felt so normal because you've been doing it for 20 years? I mean, this is shifting everything. It's shifting our perceptions. We have the opportunity to create going forward. And it's up to each and every one of us to really listen deeply to, what do we want it to look like? Because we are all, again, it's going to sound really odd, we are all individual creators. And as what we create individually becomes what we create collectively.
And when you see the ridiculousness of some reactions out there.
Yeah, we're in some weird space.
Mm-hmm.
But yet there is this feeling of hopefulness for me. So when I posted this thing, I woke up this morning and I was like, and I said to my partner, I was talking to him on the phone. I was like, I haven't even looked. So I'm afraid to look. I actually posted that last night. I'm going to get a huge pushback. And people are like, yeah, thanks for voicing this. That's what I've been feeling for a long time. I haven't had the words for it, yada, yada, yada. And I'm like, okay, so Can we come to an agreement that we know we've been heading towards this, where there's this hopefulness. There's this hopefulness of we're at a new beginning. If we choose to be. And for some of us, we won't choose that. But the biggest thing, I mean, I think it's showing us in no uncertain terms we're all in this together. No amount of privilege and power is protecting anyone from this virus. I don't know if you've seen, I see this face, and yes, they can get tested. But Rand Paul, who is this libertarian, I won't even put adjectives to him.
Mark lobbied him years ago on Capitol Hill. Yeah, I heard that he got it, but he also exposed everybody.
Yes, he did. In his arrogance, he did. But like 2 weeks prior to that, or a month prior to that, his dad, Ron Paul, was calling it out as a hoax. Well, how does that change when your son's affected? Right? This morning, Kamala Harris, who was running as her husband, was tested positive. Prince Albert of Monaco, Prince Albert II, not not Princess Grace and Prince Albert, but her son, he's tested positive.
And of course, Tom Hanks and Rita Wilson in Australia.
Yeah, yep. So it's whether you're young or old, rich, famous, powerful, there's no bounds to it. And so is this what it's going to take for everybody to realize we're in this together? Now, some people won't. People who are filled with ego and filled with, may take them longer to get there.
To get where?
To get to the point where they realize that there's no separateness between us. We are all part of the same oneness. My spiritual advisor would say, he puts it, I didn't really understand it but this virus has kind of helped me understand it, that there is the one, and we are all expressing the one differently. I'm expressing it as Rose, you're expressing it as Christine, Tom Hanks is expressing it as Tom Hanks, Prince Albert is, even Rand Paul is expressing the one as Rand Paul. But we're just part of this giant matrix, if you want, and we're all expressing it as individual components of that, but we're all part of one. And here it is. It's right. It's right there, right in front of your face. Can you see it?
Well, and I would even bring it down from that spiritual level for sort of an awakening that this is what happens when you put all your money into weapons of war, for example, and not into a social security net. And the fact that there are homeless people and people on the edge of economically, that's going to impact all of us.
Well, and in our country, the sheer ludicrousness of the fact that our people's health is tied to their employment.
Yes.
People are being laid off left and right. They're saying, not to be alarmist, they're saying that unemployment could go from 3.5, where it's been in the Trump administration, to 20%. All those people are going to lose their health insurance. Okay, how does that serve any of us? How does that serve any of us?
Exactly, but it's been acceptable, and it's sort of the system in the U.S. in particular. In Canada, we've had neo-liberal governments that have pushed us there, but we're pretty fond of our socialized medicine. We just call it Medicare here. So they've never been able to snatch that away from us, but they've been pushing and pushing. And in fact, Alberta, which is really, really going to be suffering, and my heart goes out to any of our listeners who are in that province, because wow, it's going to be rough, because they've been denying the reality of the science basically that says this industry, which has fueled this province and allowed them, they still don't have a sales tax in Alberta.
Because
They're
of
the only.
the fracking industry,
Oh no,
the oil,
that's where the oil industry is.
the oil
tar
industry.
sands,
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
And so they're going to be really hurting. And their government right now is very far to the right. And we shall see how they just trying to, the premier's been in the last budget, which came out in January, early February, based on a $58 barrels of oil. Yeah. And based
Well,
on that, he was cutting services and kicking off doctors, and doctors have been leaving the province already. So, yeah, cutting education services. So, and then all of a sudden there's all of this money. That's the other thing. When we need it, don't let anybody tell you there isn't money for basic guaranteed income, or in your country, Medicare for all. Oh, there's money. We've been collectively making decisions not to support it.
Well, and in the U.S. right now, we're having the dialogue is the fighting continues because the conservatives are Republicans they want to bail out the industries with no codicils to it. Like we learn from the 2008 debacle where we bailed out the banks, and then people lost their homes, and people lost their homes still haven't recovered. And no, evidently we didn't, or evidently it lined enough of the right people's pockets.
Well, so you've heard of Naomi Klein.
Sure.
She calls it disaster capitalism, and that's exactly what we have to be on guard for. Let's post a video. I saw a video of her saying, okay, watch out. And the reverse is also true, that this could, because everything's being shaken to the core, that this could be when we drop fossil fuel subsidies and actually implement the new Green Deal or elements of the new Green Deal, when we embrace the clean energy economy, when we put in a safety net for our most vulnerable people and make sure that everybody is okay.
Right. Well, the financial fallout from the coronavirus, there was an article in Environmental Health News this morning, or a couple days ago, that I'm just seeing this morning. And financial fallout from coronavirus could devastate the fracking and plastics industry. The likelihood of them being able to meet financial targets after this. They're talking that oil could go under $20 a barrel.
I thought it was $7 a barrel, or maybe that was just tar sands oil. But yeah, it was under $7 a barrel.
Wow.
Yeah. Alberta's, it's going to be very, very painful. And it's interesting, in quotation marks, for some reason, our federal government, there's been rumors that it's going to bail out the Alberta oil industry. And that is very, very disturbing.
Well, and hopefully there's enough political will that people are in enough pain that they're like, no, our legislators. Well, so that's what we're seeing right here is the fighting of, the GOP versus the Democrats. The Democrats are saying, the money needs to the people, and the GOP is saying, no, we have to save these industries that are too big to fail. This was the language years ago, and then and then there's, in our country, there's been this whole pushback against the Bernie Sanders movement, which because of the word socialism. And then the discussion in recent days has been, well, if the government gives everybody $1,000, which is just ridiculously so what's $1,000 going to do? But if the government gives everybody $1,000, if you cash that check for $1,000 from the government, well, I don't want to ever hear you say anything about socialism again, because when it's in your pocket, it's okay. But when it's in the pocket of the homeless guy across the street, then it's not good. So the whole house of cards,
yes,
the whole house of cards is tumbling, and we're watching it in free fall. And there's for me, there's this sense of Okay.
Hmm.
At least I don't have to wait to see when it was going to happen.
Hmm.
I'm actually sleeping better at night, which is like, that's something like the last 2 years, it would be like I'd get in bed at night and I'd be like, okay, I know I'm going to be awake in like 3 hours, no matter how much melatonin or weed I smoked or whatever.
Yeah.
I'd still be awake in a couple of hours. But now I'm like, I'm sleeping 6 or 8 hours a night. I'm like, wow,
Wow.
this has changed.
Well, we do want to recognize that some of our listeners will be really, really hurting, and they'll economically.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah, we will all be affected. Some of us certainly those people on the margins will be affected more so. And they have been, the truth is, they have been for years.
Yeah.
They have been for years, and we have ignored it. Just like we have ignored the number of species that have gone extinct.
Yes.
And, and the Great Barrier Reef and the Australian fires, and we've all said, oh well, we'll just deal with this one crisis, we'll put out the fire. That's out. Okay, well, no, we've been reactive, not proactive. This is our opportunity to be proactive. And can we look at how do we lift those people who are on the margins? How do we make them part of the equation, which we haven't even put them in the equation for so long?
So
I mean, the whole middle of our country is completely devastated.
Yeah.
The whole the farmland and all that stuff. I mean, a number of years ago when I left Seattle and drove out to Massachusetts, we drove across country, and town after all these little towns, beautiful little towns, completely shuttered. There's a dollar store, there's a Walmart, there might be a McDonald's and a Arby's, or Jack in the Box, or whatever, whatever fast food person has a
So the
franchise in your
local
town.
economy has been hollowed out.
It has been, and I think it has been for years. And I think, it is my belief as an economist that that's really what fueled Trump's rise to power, that he tapped into that anger that the Democrats were completely ignoring.
Mm-hmm. So I guess we need to wrap up, and I'd like us to leave anybody who's listening with some practical steps, because we've talked about how this can be a shift. So how do we participate in the shift that we want to see, as opposed to there's more of the same, bailing out banks and airlines and oil companies? Or we haven't had any good news. Maybe the good news is that there's a coronavirus. That sounds like what you're saying, Rose.
The good news is that we're in the shift.
Yeah. Okay. I like that.
The good news is that we're in the shift. And I practically, I think this time is giving us time to go inward. And we all need to really listen to what do we want it to look like? Don't let the fear take you over, which it can. You've got to kind of quiet that. And I've had years of practicing at that. In the beginning, the fear is really, really noisy.
Mm-hmm.
But can you begin to see what you want it to look like? I think as a practical step, can you sit down with a little notebook and say, if I could design what I want my life to look like, what would it be? Would it be commuting? Would it be working 12-hour days? I think for the most of us, it would not be. What are your talents? What are the things that you do well, that come to you naturally, that you can give in service? Do we become a society? Can we become a society? And this maybe sounds really pie in the sky, but can we become a society of where we offer our innate talents and gifts? And that's where we work. When you love what you're doing, it's not really work.
Mm-hmm.
It's sharing your talents. People will still want to fly planes because some people love to fly planes. People will still want to be doctors because some people really want to heal other people.
Mm-hmm.
Can we look inward and see what do I really love? What really sets me on fire? That's where I should be. That's where I should stay.
Okay, so that sounds like an action tip. And as for a sanity tip, I'm going to do some tapping. on the coronavirus
Mm,
specifically.
nice.
So we'll post that if people feel that they need extra boost to deal with the anxiety. Goodness knows I need it, so I'm doing it for me as much as anybody else.
All right. Well, thanks for listening.
Bye. Take care, everybody.
That's this week's episode of Earth Feels. Special thanks to singer-songwriter Kristen Hoffman for generously allowing us to use Song for the Ocean. Thanks for listening.
Don't forget, subscribe to our podcast so you don't miss an episode. Catch you next time.
Bye-bye.
Children of the earth, I'm calling out. There's a mission for you and for me.